Driver talking to you about traffic signs, the fundamental component if you want to make your driving better. In other words, defensive driving. It is one of the fundamental skills of defensive driving. It's classifications of traffic signs convey information in three ways: the shape of the sign, the colors, and the text or symbols thereon. And the classifications: regulatory signs, cautionary signs, lane designation signs, school signs. These are the biggest classifications of traffic signs, and school signs are probably the least consistent of all the signs. Most of the signs are fairly consistent, but these are not. There are some minor differences between the United States and Canada, but not a great deal of difference in terms of traffic signs. A good stuff to have a look at. Why get a dash cam? Know that a dash cam is not going to solve all your problems, and it may be used against you if you are sued, especially for those of you there in the States. Master shoulder checking, and Corey's put that video up already on mastering shoulder checking. And the number one mistake on a driver's test is not shoulder checking. So be sure you know how to do that. And don't say, oh, I have a backup camera and proximity sensors and blind spot detectors and convex mirrors, I don't need to shoulder check. Those are just backups to good driving skills. So shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. How traffic signs convey information, as I've mentioned: the shape of the sign, the colors. So construction signs are always going to be orange background with black lettering and symbols thereon, and then the words or symbols. This is how traffic signs convey information. Road sign classifications, regulatory signs. The root word of regulatory is regulation, which means it is the law. And railway crossing signs, as my good friend Tim, who is a retired police officer, informed me, are not regulatory signs in Canada. However, railway crossing signs are regulatory signs in the United States. School signs, there are signs that are under the classification of school signs. However, these are the least consistent of the traffic signs. Cautionary signs, lane control signs, and object marker signs are a subcategory of cautionary signs. But I always point this out in terms of signs on the roadway. These are the most prolific signs. In other words, the most number of signs. If you took one sign and you said which one is the most prevalent on our roadways, it would be object marker signs. But most people don't know what they mean, and most people don't even remember seeing them. Okay, but they tell you where objects are that you could potentially run into on the roadway and which side to pass on, whether you pass right or left, pass to the right, or pass to the left. So take note of hazard marker signs, object marker signs rather. Pass to the left, pass to the right, and they're important for larger vehicles. If you're driving a pickup truck, you're pulling a trailer, taking the boat to the beach on the weekend, you need to pay attention to the object marker signs. And if you graduate to a commercial license with a bus or a semi-truck or those types of things, these become even more critical, as Paul was saying earlier about cautionary signs. Okay, regulatory signs, stop signs, speed signs, railway crossing signs, and road check brake signs. These are important for commercial vehicles, as I said. The higher the class of license that you get, there are more road signs that become relevant to you. And brake check signs, height signs, grade signs, these are all relevant to commercial drivers who are on these roadways, and know that if you don't stop at a brake check sign with a big truck, the diesel bears, as they're affectionately called in the industry, are going to come after you and give you a ticket for not stopping at the brake check sign. Cautionary signs, the one at the top, 11 feet 8 inches, that is a height sign, and it's usually on these bridges that really like to make convertibles out of large commercial vehicles. And there are many videos here on social media where trucks are running into bridges, and I find it interesting because there's one of the former truck drivers that I follow on social media, and the other day he posted a statistic by the American Trucking Association in 2013 saying that 8 out of 10 fatal crashes with trucks and cars, the car is at fault. So 8 out of 10 times the truck driver is absolved of guilt in terms of crashes. And I wrote back and I said, that is not right, my friend. That number is not right at all. Truck drivers are at fault in way more number of crashes. And then, of course, the next day he posts another video showing trucks hitting bridges. And then the other day he showed a video of some driver doing something completely goofy, and they're like scraping the concrete barrier on a freeway. And I wrote and I said, do you still think it's 8 out of 10 for truck drivers that are responsible for crashes? I said, I don't think so. Okay, cautionary signs, some are relevant, some are not. So take note of these. Put the information in your head and say to yourself, okay, is it relevant to my driving or is it not relevant to my driving? Because sometimes it will be and sometimes it won't be. So if you start pulling a camper trailer and there are height signs, you may need to take note of those signs while you're driving along the roadway. Larger vehicles, as I've pointed out, destination signs, overhead signs, construction signs, and match the flow of traffic. For those of you who have your driver's license, I encourage you to drive with the flow of traffic as opposed to driving the posted speed limit. And sometimes the flow of traffic is going to be less than the posted speed limit because of congestion, road works, those types of things. So you need to manage space in front of your vehicle. The number one defensive driving tool in your toolbox is space management, always having that 3 to 4 second following distance in front of your vehicle. If you can do that, you are going to be significantly safer on the roadways and reduce your chances of being involved in a crash. Mile marker signs, these are the ticket right here. This is the sign that you need to know, and these are an excellent defensive driving tool that you can put in your toolbox for when you're driving on state roads, when you're driving in interstates, and you're driving on freeways. There are mile markers, and in most, the exit numbers line up with the mile markers. So therefore, if you're going to get off at exit 380 and you're at exit 375 and the numbers are going up, you know you're going the right way, first and foremost. And second of all, you know that in 5 miles, you're going to get off the interstate and you're going to exit at exit number 380. So once you get to mile marker 378, you know that you got to start getting over to the right side so that you can get off the interstate and you can exit. So in that way, it's a defensive driving tool that you can use to be better prepared and respond and be prepared and anticipate what's going on the roadways. These will keep you safe on the freeways. Now, know if you're in New York State, the exit numbers do not line up with the mile markers, but there's still mile markers, there's still exit numbers, but the exit numbers are not the same as the mile markers. So know that if you're driving in New York State and maybe a couple other places. I think the New Jersey Turnpike is like that as well. Somebody can correct me either here on the live stream or leave a comment down in the comment section if you're watching on the replay about mile markers. But incredibly useful tool. And as well, if you're traveling with the family and you got kids in the back, you know, they're a little bit older and they can do some math. You can say, you know, we're at exit 340, we're going to exit 400. So you got 60 miles up the road, we're doing 60 miles an hour. How long is it going to take us to get there? How much longer do we have to be in the car? So there's that little task as well. So good luck on your driver's test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Elevator fan, some signs have their own unique shape. Elevator fan, which signs have their own unique shape? Because regulatory signs for the most part are rectangle, except for railway crossing signs, which are the crossbuck. Cautionary signs tend to be diamond in shape. School signs are pentagon in shape. Overhead lane designation signs tend to be rectangular in shape. So I don't know which ones outside of those shapes. You know, stop signs are octagon, 8-sided. Some of the old railway crossing signs in the United States were round. I can't think of any traffic signs now that are round. If anybody knows any signs, and I know that in Europe, and Evan's not here right now, but as soon as Evan is here, he'll be able to tell you the two classifications between Europe and what goes on in the United States in terms of traffic signs. But outside those shapes, I don't know any different shapes in terms of unique shapes for signs. Railway crossings, are they shaped like a circle there in Indiana? Because most places it's the crossbuck, right? It's that X shape for railway crossing signs. But as I said, there are some older railway crossing signs that are circle. 7 Skinner, I live in Calgary, but I'm taking my class 5 in Alex using my parents' vehicle. It's a small town. Okay, excellent. So yes, so Skinner, definitely go to the small town before you take your driver's test and drive in and around the small town, because it's a one-horse town, but I can guarantee you that there will be some weird thing on the test that you won't know unless you go there and actually drive around the town and look at the traffic signs and whatnot. And I would also encourage you to take one driving lesson with a driving instructor at that test center and go in after hours or on the weekends and practice backing into the parking spaces at the test center so you're familiar with that. Here's the other thing that I just reminded me that you're taking your test in a small town is that you take your test in a little hick town in Alex where your parents live. The test is probably going to be 45 minutes of driving. because they don't have very many driving tests in the little town. So therefore, they got lots of time, and they're going to test you, and they're going to take you out, and they're going to drive you around for 45 minutes, and they're going to get you to do all the little tests, all the little parking maneuvers, your 3-point turn, your parallel parking, your 2-point reverse turn, and then they're going to get you to back into the parking space because, they got 4 driving tests. Whereas the people in Calgary, they have 10 or 12, maybe 15 driving tests in one day. So know that your test is probably going to be longer. Put up the videos with Charlie, and Charlie is a perfect example of this. I helped Charlie get his license. We did some driving lessons here a few years ago. He didn't do it here in Vernon. He went up to a place called Salmon Arm here in where we live here in the interior, and which, Salmon Arm, we affectionately call it Smelling Arm. We have some weird places around here. We have another place called Sycamoose, which we affectionately refer to as Silly Moose, and Kamloops is Fruit Loops. So we went to Salmon Arm, and just what I just said about a small town, his test was over 40 minutes by the time he went out and came back. Whereas had he done it here in Kelowna, had he done it, in a bigger facility as you, doing it in Calgary, it would have been 8 to 12 minutes because they have so many tests. They just need to get you out and get you back and get the test done with. So be prepared for that when you go for the small town, that your test is going to be longer. Marion, it took a good 30 minutes for my test in Burnaby, and he made me go through every stop street he could to find the route. That's curious, Marion, because, okay, Marion, just to clarify, what time of year did you take your driver's test? Because the season will affect how long the driver's test is as well. Skinner, I'm really only going out because I have a vehicle I can use rather than $90 to rent a car plus the text. Plus, I'll keep what you said in mind. Yes. And as I said, Skinner, your best, I know you're trying to save money. I know it's expensive, but if you can book an hour with a driving instructor before you go for your test, that is always the best return on investment because, as I said, they will take you out on the test route. They'll show you where the driving examiners do the slow speed maneuvers, and they will give you feedback on your readiness for the test. And they'll tell you which skills and abilities you need to shore up or practice to be better ready for the test. And they'll point out the little details, the things that you may not know or be able to recognize and say, oh, watch out for this, don't do that. School lets out at such and such a time, and this is considered a speed zone. One of the places where we used to teach truck driving in Victoria, there was a school speed zone sign there. You come around the corner, there was a school speed zone sign. There was no school in sight. You didn't see the school. There was no other than the sign. You were like, where's the school? The school was on the other block, the other side of the block. But we had to point it out to students, and unfortunately, we had a couple of students who failed because they missed the sign, even though we had pointed out to them on training. It's like, there's the sign. You need to do 30 kilometers an hour. You need to do 20 miles an hour. So those are the kinds of little details that I'm talking about from a driving instructor that will ensure that you're successful in passing your driver's test. 7X, always do a mock test before the actual test. It's worth it, believe me. Yes, exactly. I cannot concur more. That is absolute. Marion asked Vancouverites what that blinky thing is on their vehicle mean when it's on. Marion, I'm not disagreeing with you that people put their signals on and I'm not disagreeing with that. However, in my experience of teaching people to drive truck, and I would say to them, did you try turning your signal on? Yeah, but I'm not moving. Why would I turn my signal on? And I would always laugh and I go, it's magic, magic, magic. I don't know the rest of the song. That's the only words I know of the song. But it's like magic when you turn your signal on. Most people will actually move out of your way. And, I've had smart drivers come back to me over the years and say to me, well, when I put my signal on, then people speed up and intentionally block me. And I think what they're actually saying, they're misinterpreting what other people are doing. People aren't intentionally blocking you. They're speeding up to get out of your way because you put your signal on. They're like, oh my God, we're all going to die because that person's got their turn signal on. And I'm right here. And they don't see me. That's what I think, you think, I think, we think, that they think, that I'm thinking, that I think. So this is what happens when people are driving. And then the person that has their signal on misinterprets that is the other driver is speeding up and intentionally trying to block them. And they're really not. They're just speeding up to get out of the way. And so because I've seen it. I've been in congestion. You know, there was a crazy thing that used to get onto the highway, the Trans-Canada Highway in Victoria. I can't remember where the intersection was, but before they fixed it and they put in this enormous interchange, you know, the traffic used to back up for 10 blocks, and then you had to get off and you had to merge into this bumper to bumper traffic, and you just put your signal on, and you know, the first person wouldn't let you in, the second person, the third person, but the fifth person, by the time, you know, you had your blinky thing on and that you were crowding that left side of the lane and you were just like crowding them, eventually somebody created a space and left you in because they knew that eventually you were going to drive into them. So they will move. Marion, so much fun for driving in Vancouver. Yes, it's fun. And it's not just Vancouver, Marion. Sydney, Australia, Melbourne, you know, London, England, Paris, France, Germany, you know, the United States, pick your city in the United States, Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Canada, you know, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, they're all the same. And people will tell you that, you know, here where I live, blah, blah, blah. It's the same everywhere. It's the same. All over the world. Driving is driving. Epic, in some driving manuals, state or province, they will show you a lane control sign. Red X means do not enter the same line. A green arrow electronic sign means permitted to drive accompanied. Yes, and bridges will sometimes have those. Epic tunnels as well will have those. The reason they change the lanes, so what Epic is talking about is over top of the lane, there will be a sign. It's more like a traffic light, and it will either be an X or it will have a green arrow that you can drive in that lane, in that direction. And they use it to facilitate traffic flow. So bridges and tunnels, for example, during rush hour in the morning when traffic is going one direction, either into town or out of the afternoon, they will designate more lanes to go out of the city so they can facilitate traffic flow. That is what Epic is talking about in terms of those lanes and the lanes that you're allowed to be in terms of designation. It's a little bit weird if you're driving there and you haven't been there before and you go out in the morning and there's certain lanes that you can drive in and then you go out in the afternoon again, and there's certain other lanes that you can drive in. So know that and pay attention to the overhead markings about which lanes that you can go into, okay? And if you want to be totally terrified, live the Bruce Willis Die Hard series. Live Hard or Die Hard or something. I think it's the third one. It's the one with Justin Long in it where they change all the signs. They're coming into the tunnel and the terrorists change the signs so all the traffic starts coming the other way. Yeah, so, you know, have a look at that. That'll explain what we're talking about. Wheels, Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver and George Massey Tunnel in Richmond. I have that as well. Okay, there you go. So there are bridges and tunnels. Wheels super weird because in rush hour you may end up driving right next to oncoming traffic. Yes, and it's a little bit weird. Before they fixed the bridge in Kelowna from West Bank, it was the same thing. They had those lane designation signs, lights overhead. 7X, okay. Wheels, I wonder sometimes why is it that changing lanes is not allowed in certain tunnels. For example, George Massey Tunnel that connects Richmond and Delta in the Lower Mainland, changing lanes is not allowed. Wheels, I hate to speak ill of traffic, okay? I think that what I'm trying to say, it's kind of like that line from Men in Black, where Will Smith's character's like, well, you know, we can tell people they're smart. And, oh, what's his name? I can see his face. He responds to him and he says, you know, a person is smart. People are dumb, stupid, and panicky. And I tend to agree with that in terms of traffic. A driver is smart. Drivers, plural, are dumb, stupid, and panicky. And this is why they don't allow lane changes in the tunnel. Elevator fan, is it illegal to change lanes on a railway crossing? Not that I'm aware, elevator fan, but generally, I'm trying to think of a railway crossing on a multi-lane road. I can't think of one, but maybe a smart driver here or smart driver on the replay can leave a comment about railway crossings on multi-lane roads. But I wouldn't do it, elevator fan, because a railway crossing is an intersection. It is an intersection. And 40% of crashes happen at intersections, and 500 crashes still happen at railway crossings in the United States of America, 50 in Canada a year. So don't do it, okay? Don't do it. Focus on getting across the railway crossings. I know that you're not allowed to change gears in a manual transmission in a big truck when going across railway tracks, so don't do that. Marion, not that it stops some people. Of course, Marion. Traffic laws no more prevent crashes than criminal law prevents crime. They're not going to keep you safe on the roadway. And we will leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your great questions and comments and discussion about traffic laws, keeping people safe, road signs, and passing a driver's test. And look at this card here for the next video. Have a look at that and be sure to pass your driver's test first time. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.